Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues right now. And make sure to join me, Sean Hannity, this afternoon starting at 2, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. And President Trump making news over the weekend, not just with the change at Chief of Staff, but also with his speech at Suffolk Community College on Long Island about border enforcement. Here's what the president had to say.
But I have a simple message today for every gang member and criminal alien that are threatening so violently our people. We will find you, we will arrest you, we will jail you, and we will deport you.
With the continued news of violent crimes committed by persons here illegally, most recently over the weekend out of Portland, Oregon, a sanctuary city. It's a timely address. The president also went into some detail about MS-13, the Salvadorian gang that actually had its origins in L.A., that Jeff Sessions, his attorney general for now, went to El Salvador to address as well with the Ortega and communists there.
Yeah, but then he upstaged himself by later on in that same speech talking about, hey, when you put the criminals in the car, maybe you can bump their head. You're always so nice to them when you lower their head after they're handcuffed into the car. Well, and everyone's like, well, he's suggesting police brutality, and then everyone took to Twitter saying their police department it condones police brutality.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, back to the substance of the border enforcement piece and Jeff Sessions standing. Gosh, it seems to me that with Trump tweeting about his attorney general, he would be getting some advice and counsel from his legal team, including our brother in sound on these airwaves, Jay Sekulow. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Jordan Sekulow. He is Jay's son. He is also the executive director of the American Center for Law and Justice and an attorney in his own right. Jordan, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Amy.
So with respect to Jeff Sessions, is that something, without violating attorney-client privilege, is that something where President Trump has sought legal advice?
Not to my knowledge. I have the attorney-client privilege relationship with my dad, and that's we're very close with Jeff. Before he was nominated, obviously, as a U.S. Senator, we supported his decision to be chosen as Attorney General, his confirmation, and so now that in the legal situation that we are in as well, and that he, by refusing himself in that situation, haven't had as much direct contact at all because of the uniqueness of where we are and where my dad is specifically, and Jeff's role in that, which is not to be involved. And I think a lot of it stems from that. You know, we got used to 8 years under an administration where there were a lot of potential conflicts and maybe opportunities where a normal attorney general would recuse themselves, and they wouldn't. I mean, the best example, most recent, would be Loretta Lynch, just in the Hillary Clinton matter. Because of her personal relationship with the Clintons, she was appointed U.S. attorney by Bill Clinton, so she kind of started her top federal government career with him. After the tarmac meeting, she still didn't recuse herself. She put out that statement saying, I'll abide by what the FBI director presents, but she never, if you look at the key word, she never took herself out of that process. And I think that's where a lot of this kind of animosity and questioning stems from, is that, you know, why do this? Because I would acknowledge that we would probably not be in this situation if it wasn't for that recusal, and maybe was it done too hastily, too quickly, in light of all of the facts we have now. I mean, it's all hindsight in 2020, but we see what Jim Comey was putting together. His memos were ready to go. He already knew that his job was in jeopardy. I think he knew that regardless of who became president. So he was going to turn on whichever one it would be. And because I can't imagine Hillary Clinton keeping him either after what he did during the election. So I think that hindsight, you probably wouldn't want to necessarily recuse yourself, or you would have known going in that this would maybe not have been the right job in light of some meetings. Though I think these meetings he had as a U.S. Senator just not are kind of so what. I mean, he was a U.S. Senator. He met with foreign officials. It's not shocking.
Well, what do you think is President Trump's end game? I mean, would he want to replace Attorney General Jeff Sessions to hire somebody who would then maybe get rid of Mueller and the special prosecutor?
I think that's what everyone likes to talk about. The idea that in this scenario, which I think might actually end up causing more issues. I think it's more up to in Jeff's situation, him. Does he believe that the precedent he set as Attorney General now with this recusal, is it going to be, let's say we get past this issue, is there going to be another issue and another issue where he's now set this precedent that he's going to have to constantly recuse, or something like that? I don't see this. I think that people like to come up with the idea. It would, you can think, oh, this would be a quick and easy solution, but it's actually not that quick and easy. I don't think that there's anyone who would necessarily take that job and be able to get confirmed, because you have to go through that process. That would immediately take that kind of action. I don't think they would ever limit themselves. I think the only way they get quickly confirmed is if they did limit themselves by saying, I would never do that. But I'm not sure of anybody who would actually really go up for that position who would say that before knowing all the info. And you wouldn't know all the info until you were in that spot.
What about dealing with current personnel? And that's, I speak directly of Rod Rosenstein, and suggesting that maybe he revise his authorizing letter for Mueller to impose some parameters on his investigation, or is that horse already out of the barn?
That is the scope of the investigation is both the scope and any conflicts are both being looked at. I mean, very close every single minute and every part of every day. It's just that the actual investigation hasn't reached the point where any of that would be raised. So you wouldn't just throw that. I mean, you could talk about the potentials publicly, but there's a process you go through if you believe, one, the scope is being violated, or two, that there are the actual legal conflicts arising within members of the team of the special counsel.
Well, but you can't try to set parameters prospectively. I mean, for example, President Trump was asked about the New York Times. Would it be out of bounds, in your opinion, if Mueller's subpoenaed and started looking into your personal financial records? And he said it would. I mean, that would be an example where, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but that's something that you could do prospectively.
Yes, so that would be, if you had any, see, those are those interesting reports that come out where the sourcing, even the special counsel, they didn't respond.
Right.
And of course that makes everyone a bit more nervous in the sense that they didn't deny that. They wanted to come out and say, no, we're not expanding this to things that happened 10 years before the presidential race, because that is not what this mandate that we received from Rod Rosenstein is about. This says, arising from campaign relationships, not 10 years ago reported relationships that no one was hiding, no one was misrepresenting, and everyone's doing it in a normal business fashion. So yes, I mean, there are ways to get ahead of that. It's just actually it's not there yet. I mean, people try to push this along, and it's still the case that no one on that legal team has received any notice that the president himself is being investigated. And at a certain point, you can talk and talk and talk, but at a certain point, they've got to start asking for things, and that gives you the real, true indication of what they're actually looking at, not the kind of speculation from these unnamed sources.
So, Jordan Sekulow, in about an hour from now, General Kelly is going to be sworn in as the chief of staff for President Trump. He's got a pretty daunting task ahead of him, and the last person to be chief of staff who was a general, was Alexander Haig back at the Ford administration. Do you think he's going to be effective, and do you think he's going to be able to deal with these bizarre personalities and characters?
Yeah, I mean, he's part of that the team. He's done very well at DHS. I think you look at the what he's been able to do with border security just by implementing the policies and the laws that are on the books, and the way that illegal immigration is down. I think he's been effective there. He's actually kind of left that in a very good spot for whoever takes that on next. So I think that's a good indication that he's already been able to work successfully within this administration as a cabinet member. He's been, it's not like he's brand new to this. He's been chosen by the president and specifically for that position, and I think his leadership capabilities. The issue that happened, I mean, it was. I think I was actually on Fox Business Live to talk about another issue, and that broke, and so they came to me about it, and said, I think with healthcare and the issue there, which is where Reince Priebus obviously had the relationships, Capitol Hill Republicans, elected officials. The fact that wasn't able to get across the line, it was already being discussed as kind of a year-long tenure, so there's already kind of like an end game to this chief of staff role, and so I think with that, plus some of the, just personnel issues that were arising, was it really that shocking to anybody? I mean, it broke on a Friday. There wasn't a ton of a leaking about it, but I think with the healthcare vote, honestly, you look to the policy too, is that those relationships obviously weren't there strong enough to push that along.
He is Jordan Sekulow, Executive Director of the American Center for Law and Justice. Jordan, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Amy.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.